All right, everyone, it's time to talk about Trump's tax proposal because he's finally coming forward with some of the more interesting details. One of them is drop the top corporate tax rate from 35% to 15%. Now, why would I support this considering I'm, now in the middle class and I'm not a corporation, so that doesn't really affect me? This would be the biggest boom to the American economy, and he's probably right when he says 3% growth is attainable under such a situation. Right now, because of the convolution of our tax code, we have multinational corporations that pay zero because they take advantage of loopholes. They have armies of accountants and lawyers that can do that for them. They take advantage of deductions and loopholes and all the federal legalese that goes on in the tax code. They end up paying little to nothing, especially if they're, traitors against the U.S. economy and they offshore everything and take advantage of the system. So it looks like on paper they end up losing money in the U.S., but they're making money hand over fist overseas and just re-importing goods or something. Meanwhile, that mom and pop store down the road from you and the entrepreneur filing as a business and the regional chain, something like here we have like Hannaford's or Tops or something. It operates in the New England area mostly. Or any of these other more regional but U.S. only business chains. Maybe they have a couple businesses in Canada too, and that's about the extent of their expanse. They pay 35% because they don't have armies of lawyers and accountants. They can't afford them. They don't make enough to actually pay a bunch of people to make more in the long run by lowering their tax rate. They're paying their fair share. And the fair share that they're paying is way too fucking high. 35% is exorbitant for small businesses to have to pay. This means the maximum they have to pay is 15%. That means they have more money to hire more workers, pay workers more, build a new factory, build a new outlet, drop the price of their goods. That's what they now have the money to do. That would be very, very good for the American economy. Meanwhile, the multinational corporations, hopefully, if this includes streamlining the corporate tax code at all, those multinationals that currently pay zero, even though they're supposed to pay 35%, will pay 15%. Well, 15% is higher than zero. You're going to get from CNN and MSNBC and Salon and all these others. Trump loves huge corporations. They want you to think of businesses as, multinational corporations. They want you to think of stuff that they have a post office box in Jamaica, and they have factories in China and India, and they have like a few brick and mortar stores here, but they're selling all foreign goods. Exploiting corporations that pay minimum wage, or a little bit more, maybe they pay you $1 above whatever your state minimum wage is at, or the federal minimum wage, and that's all they do, and they don't like workers' protections, they won't let, Walmart, they don't let people unionize, and all these things. That's what the MSNBCs and Salons want you to think of when you think of corporate tax rate. But it doesn't just apply to those multinational corporations. These business taxes apply also to the mom and pop bookstore, or any of a million other brick and mortar single business sort of fronts in the country, as well as many regional chains and local chains. Maybe they have 3 stores, maybe they have 30, but they're not a multinational corporation. They're not trying to offshore the production of their products. It just doesn't happen. This also, by the way, to those of you in the Rust Belt, to people in Michigan and Pennsylvania and Wisconsin that voted for Trump, thank your lucky stars. This is exactly what you need, because between renegotiating NAFTA, not signing the TPP, and by the way, it's apparently a myth that he was considering signing it. That was speculation upon speculation upon speculation in that particular article. You probably saw it from Breitbart. Didn't come originally from Breitbart, came from the British press, saying, oh yeah, we have an anonymous source that says that they have an anonymous source within the Trump campaign saying that he might kind of be willing to reconsider signing the TPP. That's not news, that's clickbait. Everyone should see it as clickbait. Some people are like, oh, you're all shills for Trump by not talking about this. It's just speculation on a rumor. It's not even news. But those business taxes that are going to be lowered from 35 to 15, that affects more of the small businesses than it's ever going to affect multinational corporations. If you're already paying 0%, if you run some massive multi-billion-dollar corporation with an office in Shanghai and an office in the Cayman Islands and stores here and in Canada and Mexico, you're probably already paying less than 15%. So lowering the tax rate here, it's not going to drain revenue. What this will do is lower tax revenue in the form of business taxes. But who's saving that money? Small and regional businesses. That's a good thing. That means workers potentially make more, the unemployment level may drop, the price of goods decreases, people can consume more. You're getting almost as much tax revenue in additional taxed income on workers, maybe people who are making good wages in some cases. If U.S. industry comes roaring back to life, if you end up generating a bunch of, you know, 30,000 a year to 60,000 a year sort of blue-collar jobs in a bunch of factories and mills, because now all of a sudden they can hire more workers because they aren't paying an exorbitant 35% rate, yeah, you're getting tax revenue from those people. By the way, I'd go further. I'd cut a bunch of bureaucracy. I'd tax them less too. I'd get rid of the self-employment tax. I'd get rid of the payroll tax. I'd slash it way further than Trump is proposing. But it's a damn good start. And it's the first significant and good tax reform that we've had in a while. Bush, his idea was, oh, I'll stimulate the economy. I'm just going to throw free money at people. And it doesn't really do anything. Most of that goes out of the country because people, you know, if they're in the lower middle class and they actually care about that, what was it, $300-400 they got, they're going to pay for cheap goods. You know, oh, well, yeah, we went out to dinner and then we got some new clothes. But they were all like made in China and stuff like that. It didn't help the U.S. economy. It was like pouring a bunch of water into a bucket that's been shot full of holes. It just drains right back out. It's not going to work. This, though, will help U.S. businesses. It'll help industry in the Rust Belt. Some of that will come back. Unemployment rate will drop. You get more tax revenue from some of those solid middle-class blue-collar jobs. You then get some white-collar jobs attendant with that. You get more managers. You get some of the accountants and stuff. And those small businesses potentially can then expand. This is a great idea. I just hope that it's combined with tax relief for the self-employed and for people in the middle class as far as their income tax goes. Yeah, we should massively cut these things. Government doesn't need to be privy to half of the fucking production of the whole economy. We're spending a significant proportion of all the productive aspects of our country, from cradle to grave, involving everybody except for multinational corporations, of course, as well as primarily a significant proportion of the fruits of the land and the oil in the ground and everything else that we've got as far as resources go. We spend a significant proportion of that just administering bureaucracy, which then turns around and gives peanuts to some of those people who themselves just got robbed blind by the government. Small businesses, case in point. I strongly support this tax reform. I think that everyone should pay less, except for those multinationals that already pay zero. If we can get them to start paying 15%, that would entirely offset the loss of revenue anyway from the small businesses. Those multinational corporations, they make way, way more money than small businesses do. And this restores, by the way, something much more closely approximating real capitalism. You can't have real capitalism, a true free market, if you've got some massive corporation paying nothing, while you expect a bunch of mom and pop stores to pay 35% of their income. That's not a free market. There's a huge differential between their competitive abilities. One is smaller and they're paying more. They managed to straggle on despite having both arms and both legs tied behind their back trying to compete with Walmart or McDonald's. And yet many of them, they still exist. In some states, some of the hippie-trippy progressive states like Vermont, we have to throw a bunch of state-paid-for subsidies at some of these small businesses and farms because it's such an inhospitable climate federally for them to even continue existing. For a tourist state, even if we're far left, we end up having to prop up some of our local businesses. We got Democrats in this state, they're like, yeah, we're going to throw money at these private, for-profit capitalistic entities because it's the only way we'll have any local businesses. So that's what happens. Yeah, I support this. It could go further. He should cut taxes even further by slashing apart some of these other tax categories. There shouldn't be a payroll tax. shouldn't exist. It's retarded. You got someone that make like 15K, 16K a year, and they don't really have the money to pay taxes. They're not making enough to pay taxes. Why are you taxing them anyway? You say, okay, give us some of your money regardless. It's, you know, it's just retarded. So that should go. Income tax should be lowered across the board for everybody, especially for the middle class. We should heavily weight it towards the lower middle class, upper middle class, that sort of threshold of people. That'd be a good idea. Get rid of any taxes for the truly poor. They shouldn't have to pay anything. And in return, we can slash apart some of these bureaucracies. Yeah, we should get rid of the EPA. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't perform its function. It should be cut. The NSA doesn't perform any significant function. It should be cut. The FBI can conduct surveillance. They can do it better than the NSA does. We should get rid of half of these federal bureaucracies. They're not necessary. They're not helping the poor. They're not helping businesses. They only help themselves to more of our tax money. And if you did that, you wouldn't have to worry about a deficit anymore. We'd be making money hand over fist as a country with a lower overall tax rate. That's about all. Peace out.